Rwanda context is one where the genocide was very, very clear. In most others, you have mass atrocities that may be war crimes if there's a civil war going on or an international war, that are, attacks on innocent civilians, or on soldiers that have been surrendered and are no longer a threat or are under detention. Those are crimes. You're going to have crimes against humanity, mass killing operations that target people often on a political basis, like the disappearance of 150,000 of the Syrian jails by the regime, which maybe as many 100,000 have been killed by starvation and torture. What do you need for genocide? You need certain specific acts, which include, killing, which include infliction of serious mental or physical harm. You can have efforts to reduce births. Moving children from one group to another can constitute an act of genocide. As the Uyghur ethnicity has dramatically reduced the birth rate to such an extent that in certain areas the birth rate has become lower than the death rate, and so over 2 or 3 generations the group would cease to exist. Those can be acts of genocide, but then in order to have the crime of genocide, you actually have to have intent that the group be destroyed in whole or substantial part, and building up with false information and with messaging about these people being the enemy over time really did have the effect of enabling a mass killing campaign. If there weren't this constant drumbeat of propaganda, I refer to it almost like air support in a ground campaign. It reinforces what the forces are doing on the ground and tells people, well, we get the message from on high, this is what we should be doing. So there's no question that it contributed enormously to the genocide. It is highly significant because it did involve organs of the mass media. In the past, certainly there are examples of leaders or others that have given inflammatory speeches and encouraged people to commit horrible crimes sometimes. Our challenge was to prove that these men who hadn't actually been on the radio during the genocide or printed during the genocide, in the case of the newspaper, were responsible, and we were able to tie them to that crime and essentially convict them of direct and public incitement to genocide. I think it's significant now in terms of the precedent it sets, because actually at the moment we have other means of media that are actually even more effective than a newspaper or radio. And that includes the social media and the kind of messages that are sent through it. And particularly when it came to the attacks on the Muslim population of Myanmar in 2017, operations that killed about 10,000 of the Rohingya and then murdered and raped, raped and burned their homes of more than 300 villages. It sent 800,000 people across the border into Bangladesh. That a lot of that sort of messaging to communities, non-Muslim communities there, to support the killers and to join in the killers was messages through the mass media, delivered through Facebook, actually. Military had a site that had more than 1 million followers that continued to spread for this sort of hate and the sense that these people were the enemy who weren't nationals. They were Bengali. They weren't one of us. They weren't part of the nation.